No.
Okay.
Hello, good evening. I'm Paki from Career Naksha, and joining us today we have Miss Alka ma'am, who would enlighten us more about interpersonal and intrapersonal communication. Career Naksha is an ed-tech startup based out of Vadodara, Gujarat, run by alumni from IITs, IIMs, VIT, MSU, along with world's leading career counselors, psychologists, HR professionals, and industry experts. Karinaksha provides a modern, personalized, data-driven, psychometrics-based career counseling and development platform to school and college students, graduate, and early professionals. We have helped 15,000 plus school and college students in finding their right career paths in the last 5 years with help of scientific methods and tools like psychometrics and personalized counseling. Our reach and coverage, we have touched more than 10 lakh students across India digitally via all social media channels and completed 150K hours plus counseling and expanded our mentors and counselors network to 4,300 plus in diverse areas. Karyaksha provides a personalized and data-driven psychometrics-based career counseling and development platform to schools as well as college students, graduates, and early professionals. It has specialized on the tier 3 and cities beyond. Thus far, has worked with more than 10 lakh students in the last 5 years. Nearly 95% of its users situated in non-metro areas and government schools in Gujarat, Hyderabad, Delhi, and other cities of India. The CCI is a non-profit scientific and educational wing was founded by Dr. Divakar Sir in 2011 and has its aims to promotion of human well-being and mental health support and career counseling in India by research and practice of psychology. The Counselor Council of India and Karinaksha are two prominent organizations dedicated to guiding individuals on their career paths and personal development, while the Counselor Council of India focuses on accrediting and promoting qualified career counselors across the country. Karanaksha is a dynamic platform that provides a wide range of resources, tools, and expert guidance to help individuals make informed decisions about their careers and personal growth. Both organizations play crucial roles in supporting and empowering individuals as they navigate the complex landscape of education, employment, and personal development in India. Over to you, Alka ma'am.
Thank you, Paki. Thank you for giving me this opportunity and this lovely platform. I would, of course, formally present myself to you as this is a huge platform for any psychologist. So, hello and good evening to everyone present here. I extend a warm welcome to each one of you to this enriching session brought to you by Career Naksha, CCI, and ICHARS. Of course, these are huge, huge platforms, and I was a part of Career Naksha just a few months back. Today, we come together to understand and enhance an important life skill that will not only transform our lives but will also guarantee a much brighter future. Its impact not only influences our professional life but also our personal life. Of course, I am Alka and I am a psychologist, a life skill trainer, and a career counselor. And I have been working with children for the past 25 years at the high school level and beyond. I will take you through this incredible topic, which is interpersonal and intrapersonal communication, and within that, talk right and feel bright. I invite you to open your hearts and minds as we embark on a path of self discovery and growth. I extend a very, very warm thanks to both Ms. Paki and Ms. Huma Qureshi, who have encouraged me into coming forward as a speaker and share my thoughts and my expertise. Well, as we embark upon the topic, interpersonal and intrapersonal communication, talk right and feel bright. This is one of the most underrated and overlooked skills that has never ever been given too much focus in school. You have this 1% of children in a class who are bright, who are smart, who are vocal. Well, they're given all platforms. So you go out for debate, you go out for any kind of presentation, you go out for an elocution contest, and the rest, the 80% of the class, is sitting pretty, mugging books. I am not underrating books. I am not underrating content which is within the books, because that is an important part. But are we not supposed to communicate with other human beings, with other things, with other animate, in fact, sometimes inanimate objects? So when a teacher presents in front of you a chalk box and says, speak about it, you are addressing the class holding an inanimate object in your hand and trying to give its qualities, its characteristics, and how engaging can you make it is something that would depend on your interpersonal skills. But before we launch upon the topic, I would number one try to explain what is communication. So, as the definition goes, communication is the process of sending and receiving messages through verbal or non-verbal means. So, there are these three buckets I'm going to address all the time. One is verbal communication, the second would be non-verbal communication, and the third would be a mixture of the two. Along with that, your paralanguage and your relationship building, which is an amalgamation of both your verbal and your non-verbal communication. So communication is the process of sending and receiving messages through verbal or non-verbal means. So you see over here in this example that here is a person who's thinking that the food smells delicious, while the other person, I mean, nobody's spoken a word beyond what is there in the bubble. But this guy, he says thanks, but within his head, he's understanding it as she wants to try a bite. I mean, already the individual whom she was communicating with has made an interpretation that goes beyond what she was saying. So, don't we all do that? Whatever is addressed to us, whatever somebody speaks to us, we go beyond and we try to make sense of that. We interpret it on the basis of our culture, of our learning, of our background, about our biases also. I mean, you say one neutral line. All right, child, you're looking pretty. In a minute, the other person, oh, so I'm looking pretty only today. You see how there is a miscommunication when this was an absolutely innocent comment. So, between encoding and decoding, there is a gap which needs to be addressed. So I like these quotes, and I'm sharing it with you all so that you understand what exactly are we going to do today. It is false to assume that if one can talk, he can communicate. So no matter how much you can talk, it is not it is not a guarantee that you can still communicate. In fact, a lot of times people who are unable to talk, who probably are speaking impaired, they are communicating better than the others. You see, recently for the cricket commentary, one of the commentators who was doing the deaf and dumb commentary was given an award because she was so expressive and so beautifully explaining and passing on the messages. So you really don't need to always be able to talk. So mastering communication is about understanding the unsaid as much as the said. So while we are speaking to each other, innocent lines, there is a lot of undercurrent going on, which is also to be understood and interpreted, especially in working conditions. When you are in your workplace, it is important for a person to understand that that whatever is being said, is it just that or is there more? So interpretations constantly take place. So before we move on to interpersonal communication, let us first understand the communication process. Well, this is a simple flow chart which explains how there is a sender who sends a message, there is an encoding taking place, then that message is passed on to another person and it is decoded there, right? And once this person has received that message, she will or he will respond in a certain way, which would be known as a feedback. And there might be certain gaps in communication between encoding and decoding a message, which may be miscommunication or which may cause any miscommunication, maybe because of a poor channel or because of noise or for multiple other reasons. So when the sender is, let's say, I have observed today that an employee did not come on time and never proffered any reason. So, being a boss, I have taken that message in that this person hasn't come on time. And then I pass on that message and I ask my HR, why is it? Is there any explanation to this that this person has come late? I've noticed that she's been coming late previously also, and the person who is who is now going to decode might just say that she met with an accident. The whole scenario changes, or might just say that she's a habitual latecomer. I used to cover up for her, but today I didn't. So the entire process of communication is dependent on encoding, receiving a message, decoding, and of course the feedback. While this receiver, let's take this example forward and let me just bring in the person who was coming late. She gets to know that there is an explanation required for why she was late, and she says, I met with an accident and this is the first time I've done so. And here is a person, the HR, saying that she is a habitual latecomer. So when the feedback comes, again this sender will pass on another message. So the whole idea of the communication process is that it never stops. It is always happening at all times, and there is always a channel through which we communicate. All right, so there are various ways of communication, and primary among them are verbal, which are face to face, sorry, face to face, over the telephone, via Skype or Zoom, which is we are also communicating online. So this is also a form of communication. The second form is the non-verbal communication, wherein facial expressions, your postures, your eye contact, hand movements, your touch, all of this are important. Then there is a written. So as I mean, prominently we talk about verbal and non-verbal. Written would come as a part of verbal communication, but I am bringing it up because I need to explain how writing an email is also an art, how writing a memo is also an art, how writing something, let's say a post on Facebook, an art, how tweeting is an art. And what people do not realize is that they just shoot words, not understanding that they are leaving their cyber footprint wherein things can be interpreted anyway. So one cannot just loosely write things. Well, of course, Insta is there. There are various other platforms where people can be casual, but especially in your emails and of course in your Facebook posts, which are easily available to other people also, one needs to be careful. There is also the visual form of communication, which is through videos, images, memes, etc. And of course, there is no. I would be erring if I said that they are not important. But there is one more thing which is extremely important in communication, which is one person is speaking. Is the other person hearing or listening? So there is this gap between hearing and listening. Hearing is a biological word, so you interpret the sound waves that come to your tympanum and it goes to your auditory lobe, and that is the temporal lobe, and the sound is interpreted as a message. It's just that, hearing. While listening is when we perceive that message further on, where we understand what is the meaning of that message for us. So listening is something that very few of us do. Even while we are talking, we are ready with our explanation. How do we tell this other person that he is wrong or he didn't get me right? We do not listen to just understand and absorb. We listen to react or to retaliate, right? So, in effective communication, we need to keep these terms in mind: listening, effective listening, body language. If I was sitting here stiff, with both my hands here, head straight, and looking at my notes, I have notes, but I'm not looking at those notes. I'm looking at the screen. I know what I have to say. I'm kind of prepared. Everybody is who is coming in front of an audience, right? So why shuffle your papers? Okay, so that is effective communication, when you're able to use your entire body language to communicate what you're saying. And therefore there is a very, very interesting study by Professor Meherbian from UCLA, from the University of California, and it talks about how what is the percentage of communication which is maximum important in any kind of a communication process. So 80%, 80% of what you are saying through your body language, and 55% of what emotion or what feeling you are communicating through your words are are more important, are more focused by a listener than anything else. So you might be having a fantastic content, you've written everything beautifully, but your words are just 20% of what you are communicating. So it's important to know your content, but it is even more important to know through your facial expressions, through your eye contact, through your posture, through your touch, through your gesture, through your audience's response, what they are feeling about what you're saying. Am I leaving them confused? So just now, it's almost one sided. I am not getting any response from the people who are here, or maybe if there is anybody here. What happens? There is this constant feel: am I effective? Am i am i able to explain whatever I've decided today to bring forward to my audience? That becomes a question. So it's very important that we understand and interpret the body language of our listener also. Is she capable? If I go in a class which is like Montessori 1 or 2, and I use bombastic words, they will not understand. Or if I am addressing a bunch of corporate workers and I speak baby language, I do my oohs and ahs and poetic words, they'll throw me out in 5 minutes. So, how do you communicate is also dependent on the kind of audience that you are going to address yourself to. Yeah, so this particular slide I wanted to put separately, because these days a lot of emphasis is given on electronic communication, especially your emails. And emails do not, and mind you, if you do, great, but I would just say that the emojis and the emoticons that are there in your WhatsApp should be majorly avoided when you are writing a communication through an email, especially if it is official. It is because all those nonverbal cues, all those nonverbal gestures are not communicated to the other party, you will realize that you need to be very careful about it. So a lot of times people do not write salutations; they'll just click on reply and just write "coming soon." It just makes for a very casual response, and somehow, when you are in your official capacity, and especially if you're addressing people who are senior to you, it's always good that you are a little formal in communicating your message to the other party. So this was something that I wanted to highlight today. There are some videos that I had, of course, embedded in this presentation. Not possible to run this, but this was a simple example of how a person, when he comes on stage, one there are two contrasts. One, he's got his hands all tied and he's just speaking the words, and in the other he's using his entire body language. The contrast, whom would you like to hear more? That person who's almost statuesque, or that person who's communicating and who is showing responsiveness while communicating, right? So, well, we won't be able to play the video. Moving on, again, going back to that study by Professor Merbian, you can see over here that 73 to 80% of all communication is non-verbal in nature. So you might feel that no, my words, I need to be careful with words. No, you need to be more than careful with your non-verbal language. The way you look, somebody is telling you, "Oh, I ate 10 brownies," and you go, immediately the other person, "Oh, so she's disapproving of me." So the non-verbal communication, or the non-verbal message that the feeder, that the person who's receiving passes on, will immediately make that person more careful or put him on guard, and he would not be able to communicate as openly as he was doing earlier. All right. So the steps, or what are the most effective ways of communication? Well, they have been reduced to the 7 C's of effective communication. So, correctness, clarity, conciseness, completeness, consideration, concreteness, and courtesy. Well, number one, your information should be correct. Your sources, your information. If I'm saying Professor Mermian, I went and looked up. It's not only me, any speaker would do that, would like to understand what is the source, is it authentic or not, and is it worth even sharing. There should be clarity of language, clarity of pronunciation, enunciation is very important. uh, I think a good speaker needs to be clear, should not be rushed, should be able uh, to at least have good command over the language, be it Hindi, English, whichever language the person is communicating in. There needs to be clarity of thought and expression. Concise. Conciseness is crispness. You cannot just go blah, 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 blah. You have to be short and crisp in your explanation. Otherwise, every word in this particular presentation can be exemplified. But what needs to be exemplified at this juncture, or what needs to be done, is important, because there is a time and space regulation. Along with that, interest of the person, the span of attention of a person. So it needs to be concise. Completeness, to tap the topic 360 degrees. It's not just that I've touched the topic and because there was no time, so Russian over. Completeness, whatever you've picked up, you should be able to communicate that beautifully and effectively. Consideration, like already when we were starting with this live streaming, I was told that can we keep it between 40 to 45 minutes. Consideration for the audience, people who are listening to to the person, they also need to do their work. They also have other things to do. Why would anybody just sit there and sleep in front of the screen? So consider other people also. Be careful in your examples. Do not give politically incorrect examples in an open forum. And of course, do not bring your prejudices and biases in any public speaking, right? Concreteness, be concrete. So similar to concise, but you need to be concrete. uh, Clarity of concept should be there, and of course courtesy. So, well, when I started with a thank you to the people, to the platform, it was my courtesy towards them, that thank you so much for bringing me here. It's not that this is the only platform I talk on, but it's extremely nice that they gave me this opportunity, and they need to be thanked. That is what we do when we go and address an audience. We express our gratefulness. I'm extremely grateful to you that you are out there listening to me, right? So now coming to the topic at hand, which is interpersonal communication. I think that the graphic is almost very, very clear. So here is a communication which is aggressive, which is almost fisticuffs. And here is a communication where everybody is working together as a team. They're all communicating, but it isn't like they're having fisticuffs. So communication, interpersonal communication, is not a tug of war between two parties, because you're working in a team. Interpersonal already is, you're talking from one end to the other person. So we are not enemies. We are here to exchange thoughts, information, ideas, and feelings. And we are going to use our non-verbal as well as verbal methods. And we would, of course, use our voice, our facial expression, our body language, etc., to communicate with each other. That is interpersonal communication. Now, the types of communication tones, they could be assertive, passive aggressive, or passive aggressive. Well, assertive is the most acceptable form of communication, which always is a winner. So you are not apologetic about what you're saying. Assertive is when you're making an impact through clarity of content, and you are communicating to the other person your thoughts without hurting the other person, but without apologizing for your thoughts yourself, right? Passive is a person who's scared, who feels I am not okay. I am, so they're scared. They don't care too much about being there. So they're very tentative while they are communicating. Aggressive people are almost always reaching out for the collar of the other person. Aggressive. Passive aggressive. I think passive aggressive is very interesting to all the female audience, because all mostly women, and I would say mothers. Again, I'm entering a domain which I should not, but we normally become passive aggressive. So sometimes we are passive. The same thing is all right. All right, you came late. All right, your work is not complete, etc., etc. All right. And suddenly on one certain day, oh my God, there are consequences for not working on time, and then punishments, memos, um, all kinds of negative reinforcements. That becomes aggressive. So most of us, they, like a pendulum, we go passive, we go aggressive. So again, I think I had a video which doesn't work, but I'll just sum it up in one simple example. Let's say you are waiting at um, for your doctor's appointment. So it's at 1 o'clock and it's already 1:30. So an aggressive person will go to the person at the counter and say, do you not value my time? Am I sitting here just wasting my time and your doctor is sitting and chatting inside? aggressive. It will not. It will end up in an argument with no consequence. Now, the assertive person might just go and say, I had an appointment at 1 and it's already 1:40. Do you think it can be hastened? Because I need to go for another appointment. You said you've communicated in clear words what you require. Now the passive person will say, excuse me, I had an appointment. Before she even completes the line, the other person will say, no, the doctor is busy. That is passive. While the passive aggressive might one day be passive, the other day he will be aggressive. So the best kind of tonalities that one uses in an interpersonal communication is assertive. So high openness of communication is especially seen in assertive people. High consideration for others as well as high openness of communication is seen in people who are assertive. Now, there is clarity, there is appropriateness, there is respect. And if you see the example of assertive communication, can't control others, but I can control myself, which is not there in an aggressive person. I'm responsible for getting my needs met in a respectful manner, right? So when you are telling the person that I have to go to another appointment, you are trying to tell that person my time is as precious as yours without being rude, right? So so I will not ponder upon the others as we have a limitation of time. So interpersonal communication in a formal setting is a psychological contract where an individual's belief in mutual obligations between that person and another party, such as an employer, is there. So it is basically a it's an understanding. It's an understanding between two people. You know that the other person will be will be courteous to me. You know that in this setting, when we both meet, we will converse like two gentlemen, right? And we are here to work as a team, and we are here to maximize our profits, our potential, our growth, whichever be the case in that particular situation. So we come to the next topic, which is psychological contract. And here we will only focus on the transactional contract. It is a type of psychological contract that is characterized by an exclusively economic focus, a brief time span, an unchanging nature, and is narrow and well defined in scope. So, if you are entering your workplace and you go there only to work and come back. I go there, I earn my salary, I care a damn about people who are there, my co-workers, my bosses, the problems. Let's say the person who's getting me tea has a sick wife at home and he's looking a little down. I don't have a spare word for him. That is typically what a transactional contract person is. While a relational contract person is one who builds relations around them. So, a type of psychological contract in which the parties have a long term and a widely defined relationship with a vast focus on each other, interpersonal benefits. So, you will see that people who are in a workplace, wherever there is a relational contract, there the interpersonal communication is very very effective. Well, there is something known as this as transactional analysis, or how we transact with each other. And of course, and there is an overlap between transaction, contract, and also tonalities. And you'll see that there are these four type of people who exist in any workplace, in any relationship situation. One is I'm okay, you are okay. These are happy and assertive people. These are the most successful people because they are happy themselves, they are happy around, they spread happiness, they are most well adjusted. The angry and the aggressive ones are, I'm okay, you are not okay. I'm always right, everybody else is not right. Well, you know how aggressive persons can be such a pain in any workplace. The third type is, I am not okay, you are okay. These are helpless passive people. They always have complexes about themselves. They feel absolutely unable to do anything, or they're scared of taking any kind of initiative. I'm not okay, you're okay. Well, so these are the passive people who always look helpless. The fourth kind is, I'm not okay, you are not okay. Now, this is the hopeless people, the passive aggressive people. I am not okay, you are not okay. So nothing around me is okay. So these are like, people angry with the world, angry with themselves, angry just, they have people who are fighting without any cause, right? So we would just summarize this by saying that the assertive people who say, I am okay, you are okay, are the ones who are maximum satisfied and happy people in any work setting. I'll move on from here because I think there's paucity of time and need to talk about intrapersonal communication also. So, what are the barriers to effective communication? That is so important. There are so many barriers, but I'll focus on the cultural barriers, the gender barriers, and of course, um, there are sometimes some barriers which come because of the prejudices that we carry. So, fear of being criticized could be something that, because we've already assumed, we live on assumptions. So, when we are communicating to somebody from the opposite gender, one needs to know the nuances, even in this equal world. You cannot just slap somebody's back and start talking in a workplace. You can't do that. And if you do that, then please be ready to get a slap back, right? So it is important how you're dealing with. Gender is important. Then culture. Let's say in a culture where a handshake is important, you need to know how to extend your hand and shake it. In a culture where mending or hugging, like the Arabics, cheek kissing, you need to be aware, especially when you're going abroad, when you are crossing continents, you should be very, very clear about what is the accepted norm. Japanese, extremely formal people, they bend down and they are acknowledging your presence. So you can't just go and just grab and hug them. No, you can't do that. So again, this video won't play, so I'm going to leave it at that. But that is what basically miscommunication in interpersonal communication was mostly about. There are other things that also needed to be focused on, but we will come back to them if time permits. All right. So interpersonal skills promote teamwork. They help in leadership. I mean, these are the advantages of a good of a person who is good or who's high on interpersonal skills. It is known as the PQ, right? So as you have an IQ, you have a PQ. Your personal quotient is very high. If you are performance quotient is very high if you are high on interpersonal skills. So people with high interpersonal skills are highly dependable, flexible. They are active listeners. They are empathetic people. They are patient. They, of course, they are well in control of their team, and they are great leaders. We will be touching upon this. Please remember this slide. We will be, while we are ending this, we will be coming back as a reference to this. So, as we've seen, the importance of interpersonal communication is, as I mentioned earlier, it cannot be emphasized. I think it is an important part of any when we are doing moral science in school, or when we are doing life skills in school. I think it should be the number one thing, because it allows a person to, number one, reflect, understand himself, and then be able to communicate to the other person. We move on to the intrapersonal communication. So, interpersonal is this, intrapersonal is this. How much do you know yourself? How much do you understand your own individual personality? What is your internal dialogue? How do you address yourself? So, that person, that passive aggressive person, thinks nothing of himself. Such a person, when he communicates, when he goes interpersonal, there'll be a problem. So, intrapersonal communication is the process of communicating with oneself. It is an internal dialogue that occurs within a person's mind. It is self-talk process that helps individuals understand their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So, only if you're sorted within can you be sorted with the world. So, be careful how you are talking to yourself, because you are listening. It's my favorite quote: every single cell in your body is eavesdropping on your ideas and thoughts. So, always pleasant, positive thoughts. So, how do we communicate with ourselves? What is intrapersonal communication? It comprises of self-talk. It comprises of how you reflect. What is your self-concept? What is your empathy quotient? How do you talk to yourself? How do you communicate with yourself? Right? Um, so in this intrapersonal communication, I would definitely talk about self concept. How do you feel about yourself, your beliefs, your values, and your attitudes? I can only give you my example. I have recently retired, and I always thought that this is it, I'll hang my boots and I'm happy. But all the time there was this niggling thing in my head that if I sit at home, I'll make everybody's life miserable, because I cannot just not do anything. So I tried everything. I am a very proud grandmother. Well, the child is growing, he goes to school. What do I do then? Then, so needlework, etc., etc. But this mind was running. So one needs to reflect and understand, what do I want? And at what cost do I want? So I understood that if I do any regular job, I would not be able to focus on what I really want to do in life. So one needs to sit down through journaling. You understand what journaling is? Write a diary. I'll come to that. Write what you want to do in life. And that builds your self concept. What are your beliefs? What are your values and what are your attitudes? My value is family first. My value is that I will always respect the other person's belief system. And of course, I have a very clear cut belief system of my own. That is how one needs to develop his self concept. And it starts from age 5 and 6, when the parent is passing on conditions of worth to the child. So, the example of self concept is dreaming, daydreaming, daydreaming and nocturnal basically is night dreaming, general thinking ranging from mundane tasks to complex problems. So I'm not going to read this. I'll explain through these particular types. Expectations. What are your goals in life? How do you set out writing your goals? Because no goal which is not written, which is not emphasized, will ever be achieved. You've got to put it right in front of you in black and white, and then it becomes 80% possible for you to reach it. So, what is your expectation in life? Then, perception. How do you perceive things outside? How do you observe people? What are your expectations? And how would you like people to see you, right? What do you see in others? What do you see in yourself? Again, this is a beautiful video. I wish maybe later I would be able to share the these particular uh, videos, um, or whatever be the method. But this is again one of the things that I'm missing. Well, so examples of intrapersonal communication. especially in the written form, is journaling. So write down. If you can't write down, just take out the notes from your in your phone and write your thoughts. Not always negative thoughts. Please do not. Sometimes you're sitting in the car and you look outside and you see a very pleasant face. Write that down also. I loved that face that I'd seen. I felt like smiling. Or I loved the packing of my gift. The gift was okay, but the way it was packed was so beautiful, I got excited. Something good, something bad, if you can write that. That is why people maintain shopping lists, reminders, and of course, dear diaries, as we call it. um, Enter into these kind of activities. Who am I? Sit down, and if not write, writing becomes convenient, but if you could reflect and understand who are you. I have had students who got into engineering and are now doing psychology. uh, Probably sometime they must have sat down and reflected that this is what I want to do, or this is not where I want to go. So, sitting down and being aware of what you expect of yourselves and what you expect of life is very important. The who am I exercise, it shouldn't be done once, it can be done at various stages of your life. Creative visualization, sitting in a corner and sometimes imagining things, imagining pleasant outcomes. I am imagining what happens after this talk ends. It's a creative visualization. It could be pleasant, it could be maybe I go out and have a cup of tea, a nice pleasant cup of tea, and that is my happiness quotient. So creative visualization is when you create some kind of a positive picture or a positive visual that would be attained once you have gone past a certain goal, right? So various opportunities of mindfulness in your daily chores can happen while you're driving, while you're doing mundane tasks like brushing your teeth or cleaning utensils. Well, you can meditate. I'm avoiding that word meditate because people just say that it's too cliched, but meditation helps. And of course, how you talk to yourself. I mean, don't criticize yourself. um, don't just always be your own worst critique, right? And stay in the present moment. Stay stay you have a proper diary, maintain a routine if possible, and try to stay in the moment, enjoy every minute of it. And of course, set smart goals. Well, smart over here is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely goals. So make goals which are achievable, and if they're not achievable, break them down into smaller goals so that you do not feel discouraged if it is not achieved. Right. So the advantages of intrapersonal communication enhances self-awareness, improves decision making, and reduces stress and anxiety. And of course, the best outcome is that you will become super confident about yourself. So interpersonal communication allows you to understand yourself, your emotions, and your behaviors better. Getting a firm grasp on your emotional state will facilitate internal conflict resolution to a large extent, so you can make better decisions without being limited by your biases. So you go beyond your biases and prejudices, and you become that person who's able to resolve conflicts easily. So I think, at the cost of repeating myself, uh, the combination of good, effective intrapersonal and interpersonal communication is simple because it is a symbiotic term. Intrapersonal communication is good, interpersonal communication will become better. So it is highly interconnected, and one should never undermine one over the other. So, a character may give herself a mental pep talk, respond to another character with a joke, but in her head, so basically, People can in their head be, making fun, being sarcastic, bringing down the other person, but remember always that this causticness that you're passing on might make you feel so badly about yourself that no matter how much negativity you are passing on, one needs to remember that you also have some remains of it left, right? I'm closing by saying that a person who has both, who is high both on interpersonal and intrapersonal communication, these are people who are considered to be emotionally intelligent, one of the prerequisites of a very effective leader. So I would say that each one of us needs to have that kind of command, and if not, work towards being emotionally intelligent through improving their interpersonal skills as well as their interests. So this is the biggest soft skill that one needs to be able to press forward. I close my presentation, and I hope that I've been able to pass on um, whatever was there in the topic. Yeah. So thank you very much, audience. Um, I'm very grateful that I was able to communicate, and I am sure that if there are any questions, I'm always ready to answer them.
For that very enlightening webinar on the communication skills. I have one question. How can we actively listen?
Right.
Like,
That's
are there
yeah.
any tips or ways to do it?
Yeah, yeah. See, the moment you had completed your question, I interrupted you. That is not active listening. But when you were talking, and even now, you are nodding your head. So your non-verbal communication, especially your gestures, wherein you have
Hmm.
an open posture, and you nod your head, and after you have after the other person has completed her communication, like when you had asked your question, I could have very well paraphrased your question by saying, so
Hmm.
you want to understand how one could actively listen. That
Hmm.
is one way. Or how, or do you think that effective listening could happen through so and so ways? So paraphrasing becomes extremely important. Your non-verbal gestures become important. Your nods, your eye contact, your openness, in fact, your understanding of a person, eye
Hmm.
contact is something which again in our culture is not earlier it was not considered great. Aankh lada ke baat karna, nobody liked it, but now people encourage the other person to look up
Hmm.
in the eye and talk. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I have one more question. Uh, how can we practice assertive communication tones? Because I'm someone who's always a little polite or hesitant in asking. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I got the key word polite. So an assertive person may be a polite person also, but an assertive person would never hesitate to pass on information to the other person, right? So an assertive person, how to practice assertiveness is number one, develop that confidence within yourself that whatever I'm saying is impactful, is well thought of, and of course is not going to probably hurt the other person. Then you
hmm.
become assertive. See, the moment you are out there to hurt, it becomes aggressive. So
Hmm.
assertive person is very clear in his communication, in his or her communication, but along with that is polite. So today the word professional is used randomly, but when we are
Hmm.
professional, we are also objective. We don't get subjective. So we are careful. So let's say if I'm talking to you, oh, we both are wearing blue. Wow, that's such a lovely coincidence. Makes the other
Hmm.
person comfortable, but that doesn't mean that I am trying to get some favors just because I want to pass on a
Hmm.
compliment you, you know. So it is done, and then you come back straight. Um, Sorry, Paki, I exceeded my talk by 10 minutes. Yeah, I didn't mean to extend. So what has happened? Assertively, I have communicated that without of course I was pleasant with you, and along with that I was clear that I crossed the limit just now by 10 minutes. I'm sorry, and then also communicated that I'm grateful in that same tone. I mean, you would
Hmm.
have understood that without me being
Hmm.
rude, or else I would have just shrugged my shoulder and said kya hua, 10 ही minute to hue, you know. So
Hmm.
so effective. So it's very nice to be polite, but um, don't bend backwards. Yeah.
Hmm.
So if somebody is continuously giving you back in an impolite manner, then of course one needs to change their tactics. But you know, especially in this work situation where the other person is, let's say, a client or or a consumer, uh, people try to be more assertive, or sometimes they accept the other person quietly.
Hmm.
But there are times when you have to set the boundaries. Yeah.
Okay. So, in a way, we can use the seven C's of communication here, right? In being assertive.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. So the word, I would say, concrete, concise, etc. The seven C's are as important as also your command over your thoughts, because you know. So what hits most of us is, especially in conditions where you're pushed to that point where you might just lift your hand, or you might just use I
Hmm.
wouldn't say abusive language, but you might be rude. So one should also understand one's own limits. Ki,
Hmm.
this is my pressure point. I am going to avoid this. So this is a client. It's a valued client. I am not going to be rude, but I need to close this discussion as fast as possible, or else this person is going to hear from me. So we also need to. That is where self-reflection comes in, and you would understand where things are going. You know, your fists would be getting tightened, you know, when you are getting angry.
Hmm.
Gently, no, relax, relax, take a deep breath, and then speak. Yeah.
Thank you for clearing my doubts, ma'am. If anyone has any questions, we can take them in the next 5 to 10 minutes time. Please write your questions in the comment section.
um should I reduce this? Should I get out of the screen, exit full screen, because I can't see. Yeah, I can't see. Yeah.
Anyone, if you guys have any questions, I think not. So I think we are ready to end the session. Thank you
All
so
right.
much for enlightening us, ma'am.
Thank you, Paki. Very grateful for your patience. So I'll